Welcome back to the double leg. I'm one half of the show, Hey Jai Picks. The other half of the show, the parlay. Joining me in to break down some UFC Paris. Let's get it. All right, coming off of UFC Singapore, we're going over to Paris. We got 10 fights to break down in this video. We got 2 fights that are still waiting to be announced, and they're looking for opponents after a couple opponents had to pull out. So that's William Gomi still waiting on an opponent, and Taylor Lapilus still waiting on an opponent. But we got 10. Hopefully we'll have 12 by the end of the week, and once those fights get announced, we'll break down those fights in an individual video there. But we're going to go through and give our breakdown and prediction for each fight. We're not going to give you any bets. If you want our bets, you can go through the link in the description and join the Double Leg Premium membership. Most of the time, we don't even have any bets at this point in the week. So if you want those, jump in there. But what do you think of the card overall?
Yeah, overall, we're going to see a lot of new talent, especially a lot of French fighters making their UFC debut. Always interesting, having to watch tape off of regional scenes and guys that don't have the best level of competition and trying to gauge how good they're going to be at the UFC level. So a lot of work to be done this week when preparing bets, but it always makes it fun too to kind of scout this new talent. So going to be a fun card.
Yeah, it's always a little dicey when you get, newcomer versus newcomer type fights, especially the European guys. You don't know how well the competition they're facing is, when they're on the regional scene, a lot of them fighting in different countries and such, but we did our best to break them down, and we'll give that to you here. Let's start it off with the main event, the man whom which this fight card was built around, Ciryl Gane, coming in at -160 against Sergey Spivac, who sits at +130. The dog over under 2.5 rounds, +132 for the over, -162 for the under. Ciryl Gane coming in here 3-2 in his last 5. The only 2 losses, obviously, to Francis Ngannou and John Jones. And Sergey Spivac 4-1 in his last 5. He has been on quite a run. His only loss in a very long time, the last 3 years, is to Tom Aspinall. That's not anything to hang your head about at this point. This is I don't want to say similar to the Aljo Sean O'Malley fight, but it kind of is, because you got Ciryl Gane, the striker, Sergey Spivac, the grappler. It is a striker versus grappler matchup, no doubt about it. And if you watch Gane's last fight, you probably don't feel too good about if it goes to the ground. But the same can be said about Spivac. If he's got to stand and strike with Ciryl Gane, it's probably not going to go well for him. Who are you thinking in this one?
Yeah, it's really tough because, for Sergey Spivac, I wish that I could have seen him fight a guy with the skill level of Gane on the feet. Like, he doesn't really have anybody on his record with that caliber of striking or that, fast twitch movement that Ciryl Gane does. I mean, he beat Derek Lewis, who's just a power puncher, who's going to sit there and load up on that one shot. He beats Augusto Sakai, who's not in the UFC anymore, beats Greg Hardy, not in the UFC anymore. Alexei Oleinik, 40 whatever years old, who is retired now. So it's like he doesn't have that fight that you can really gauge how this one's going to go or how he's going to deal with that kind of striker that Gane is. Does have the loss to Aspinall, which could be somewhat of a sign. Aspinall's fast, great striking. And for Ciryl Gane, the last 3 fights, he's fighting guys at the top of the division. I mean, Ngannou, John Jones, Tai Tuivasa. So he's been in there with killers. But something just told me before the John Jones fight that Ciryl Gane just doesn't seem interested in fighting. Like, he doesn't seem like he's dying or hungry to make a title run by any means. Like, you watch some of his stuff, he just seems way too laid back for me. Now, if you go look at his Instagram and stuff, it seems like maybe he's flipped that switch a little bit. He's starting to work on his grappling and taking it a little more serious. But I mean, before the Jones fight, he was talking about he didn't even start training until the fight was announced. He's been on the couch the whole time. He's not really training any wrestling or grappling. And that was like a huge red flag to me, especially a guy who's going to be fighting dudes at the top of the division from here on out. So if he's fixed, or if he's been working on some of the wrestling, I think he has a good shot here because Spivac, how strong he is, what his game plan is going to be. And if he gets a guy like Gane down, I don't see Gane having much success working back to the feet without getting taken right back down. So it makes it interesting. But if Gane can catch him early with some shots that make Spivac a little hesitant to shoot in, I think he's going to have a lot of success because Gane on the feet is going to be faster than everybody. He's at range. He's as good as they come at heavyweight, and he'll be able to fight for all 5 rounds if it has to go there. So overall, I do think Ciryl Gane bounces back here. I do think he's probably taken this whole thing a little more serious at this point. At least that's what I'm led to believe by looking at his socials and everything. But it will be a tough fight for both guys, really. Spivac is a monster. He's super strong, and that grappling is no joke. So, but for the pick, give me Ciryl Gane.
This is a tough one. I hate doing the striker versus grappler thing because more times than not, the guy that you pick, you're either going to look like a genius or you're going to look like a complete idiot. Like that's how the Sean O'Malley Aljamain Sterling fight went because Aljo didn't get it to the ground. So he's outmatched on the feet. He's going to get knocked out. In this one, you get the opposite because Ciryl Gane is the favorite, the striker, and then the underdog is the grappler. If you look at Gane, like he's been fighting at the top of the division for a pretty good amount of time now. I mean, most of his UFC career, he's only had like 4 fights that were really outside of the top 10, top 15. And I mean, wins over Rosenstrike, Volkov, Lewis, and became the interim champ, and then fought Ngannou, who's one of the best heavyweights on planet Earth, and then lost to John Jones. So his only 2 losses in his entire career to 2 of the best heavyweights of all time, probably. So that's, you got to take that into account. Obviously, he just hasn't looked good on the ground whatsoever. Like every loss that he's had is fights that he's gotten taken to the ground. If he's gotten taken down, he's lost. So coming into this one, I would find it very hard to believe that he doesn't get taken down. So that's really tough to take that into account and still lay the chalk on him. But then you look at Spivac, he hasn't been fighting as high up in the rankings, but I mean, he's still able to pick up wins over like Derek Lewis. Really didn't have any problem against Derek Lewis. Win over Augusto Sakai is like, yeah. A win over Greg Hardy is there. Like his really only good win is Derek Lewis, but it was a very dominant win. And since the Aspinall loss, it's almost like he's kind of turned a corner in his career to be like, he's kind of this dominant wrestler now. I mean, he's 3 takedowns against Greg Hardy, 6 against Augusto Sakai, 6 against Derek Lewis, and was able to finish them all in the first or second round. So he's able to rack up takedowns very easily. He's got a 65% takedown accuracy. That's pretty hard to do, especially at heavyweights. Like these are tough guys to bring down. And he's averaging 5 takedowns per 15 minutes. I mean, Ciryl Gane's going to get taken down in this fight. So it's like, can he survive? Well, if you look at what John Jones did to him, you'd say no. But that's John Jones. This is Sergey Spivac. How good is Sergey Spivac? We're going to find out. Personally, the reason that I took Sean O'Malley is because you see the striker versus grappler. Obviously, they're much better at one aspect of the fight, but I just like to go with the underdog because that's more value to me. So in this spot, Spivac, much better on the ground, but is going to be outclassed on the feet, but he's the underdog. So I'm going to take him because plus money, if he can get it to the place where he wants the fight to go, he's got a big edge. And I find it hard to believe he doesn't get a takedown here. So I'm going to go with Spivac. I might look really dumb. But the thing that's helpful to me for taking this pick is like Ciryl Gane is not some big knockout puncher. Like he doesn't knock guys out clean. It took him 110 significant strikes to knock out Tai Tuivasa. And he's only gotten, I mean, it took him 3 rounds to knock out Derek Lewis. He's got a number of decisions on his record. He's not some big knockout puncher. So can Spivac, take some shots on the feet? Absolutely. He's got pretty good cardio. Both guys have good cardio. I could see this going longer, but if it goes to the ground, it's just don't like it for Ciryl Gane. So I'm going to go with Sergey Spivac. And I think it's dog or pass to me. I don't know. I mean, you would think with everything that just went down, everything that I just said is factored into the betting line. So maybe you're getting some value on Ciryl Gane, but what do you think, like line wise? Or is it scary to bet on Ciryl Gane at chalk or no?
Yeah, it does, because I mean, like you mentioned, man, he's coming off of a loss to John Jones, who's obviously the GOAT, the best of all time. Um, and he's shown his only weakness he's really shown in his whole career is that ground game and getting taken down. And he's fighting a dude who notoriously takes dudes down over and over and over. So just that factor alone, I am surprised this line's not closer, because like you mentioned, man, if he does get taken down, he could be in a world of trouble with Spivac. Spivac's that good, he's that strong. And you got the cardio factor where both these guys have good cardio. So you mark off all the boxes on each side, and I think the fight is pretty damn close. Each guys have their area they're going to be better than the other one in. Both guys are really good in the areas they shine in. Gone with the striking, Spivac with the grappling and wrestling. So when you boil all of that down, I do think it's a closer fight. And to take Ciryl Gane on the money line -175 just seems too risky to me. Like from a betting, I'm going to take Ciryl Gane to win the fight, but from a betting standpoint, it's completely different. Like you mentioned, dog or pass here. And if you are taking the dog, like you have things to look forward to with that wrestling. And, basically if you take Sergey Spivak, you're just sitting there wanting him to spam takedowns from the beginning. And once he gets him down, your bet's going to start looking really, really good. So, yeah, I think this line should be a lot closer, in my opinion.
I will say Spivac probably needs an early finish, because the longer the fight goes, it's going to be tougher to take him down. Gane's got good cardio, and the amount of volume he can put on you on the feet, it's going to add up over time. So I think he probably needs a early finish. Can he get it? We will see, but he'll be the pick for me. Co-main event, flyweight bout here. Rose Namajunas coming in at +150 in her return fight against Manon Fiorot, who sits at -180. Over under 2.5 rounds, -200 for the over, +165 for the under. As I alluded to, Rose Namajunas coming back after a long layoff. Last time she was out, she lost the belt, pretty much gave out the belts to Carla Esparza. In the strawweight championship, this is her move up to flyweight to 125 from 115. We'll see how she matches up. But she's got her height is 5'5", and going against Manon Fiorot, who's 5'7". Not too big of a reach advantage there for Fiorot, but she does seem to be pretty built for 125. We'll see how Rose Namajunas looks at 125. But she's coming in here off the loss. I mean, it was a really bad look, and everything that has come about after that, as far as in the interviews, she basically said, like, I just didn't really feel like fighting that time, like that night. So it almost seemed like she was like, all right, I'm kind of done with this whole fighting thing. And then she comes back a year later, and I guess she's getting back into it, and she wants to move up to 125. Maybe that's some sort of new excitement for her to chase something new. And she's getting a tough opponent with Manon Fiorot. I mean, she's getting thrown right into the mix at 125. If Fiorot gets a win here, odds are she could probably get a title shot for the winner of Valentina versus Alexa Grasso. She's 33 years old, obviously from France, and she's going to be having the home crowd behind her. She hasn't lost since her professional debut. She's 10-1. She's on a 10-fight win streak. She's got some really solid wins in the UFC. I mean, Tabitha Ricci, who is a 115er. Mayra Bueno Silva when she was at 125, Jennifer Maia, and then last time out, the number one contender forever, Katlyn Chookagian, she won a decision against her. So she's been off for nearly a year. It's been 10 months for her since her last fight. It's a tough one to digest because you don't know what kind of version of Rose Namajunas you're going to get. But either way, Manon Fiorot pretty damn good. And if there's not a lot of 125ers out there that can beat her, I wonder if Rose can. What are you thinking?
Yeah, here's the way I see it is that, even if Rose shows up with her A game, it's still going to be a tough fight because Manon Fiorot is that good. Like on the feet, Manon Fiorot is, I mean, she just like laps girls with the striking numbers and the volume and the pace. Like you look at some of these numbers she's put up. I mean, Chookagian was the closest in terms of striking. She landed 98, Chookagian 76. Everybody else, I mean, Jennifer Maia 83-37, Bueno Silva 91-48, Ricci 84-17. I mean, it's insane how much volume and the pace she can put on some of these girls. And for Rose, like she's already accomplished everything. She's been the champ. She's knocked out Joanna Jędrzejczyk and knocked out Zhang Weili. Like she has done absolutely everything. And, she's talked about her struggles mentally and, even it showed in the Carla fight. She just didn't want to be there, didn't feel like fighting. Like, how much of that is she still battling? There's so many unknowns with Rose. Like I said, man, she's done everything already. How much longer does she even want to be doing this? So you take that up against a girl like Fiorot, who's going to be locked in, laser focused, and show up like she does time and time again, who's hungry, who wants these title shots. I just think that's a tough spot for Rose, in my opinion, because the style too. Manon Fiorot is a phenomenal striker, but she'll hit takedowns when she needs to. Like, she'll stuff takedowns if you try to take her down. And the longer the fight stays on the feet, you have to knock her out, which doesn't happen really, but that's your only path, because she's going to put these insane numbers on you. Like, she's always going to outpace girls and land more strikes. And for Rose, man, you look at her last before Carla, her last loss was Jessica Andrade by KO, and then she turned around and beat her in a split decision. And we've watched Jessica Andrade lately, and she has not looked good at all. And she's fighting a girl that close when the fight's primarily on the feet. Makes me think someone like Fiorot is kind of gonna put it on her if she doesn't get knocked out by Rose. So yeah, for the pick, I'm taking Fiorot. I think it's her time. I think she's well deserving of a title shot if she wins here. And I just see that happening. I see her getting the better of Rose on the feet.
Yeah, it's Rose Namajunas. It's crazy to think. I mean, she's the younger fighter here compared to Manon Fiorot, but Rose has been in the thick of it for a very long time. I mean, her first fight in the UFC was for the Ultimate Fighter title, which was like the inaugural strawweight championship for the UFC. So she's been around for a very long time. She's had a number of big fights. This is a big move for Manon Fiorot to be in this spotlight as a co-main event. It's good that she'll have the crowd behind her. But for Rose, it's like she's 31 years old. She could very well come back and, make a run at 125 because she's young enough to be, make another like second career at 125. It very well could be because she's very, very talented, very skilled. You watch her fight. Like, I watched the Weili fight back, the one that actually went the full distance. Like, we all know how good Weili is, and Rose's striking is so accurate and it's so well timed that it makes me, I don't want to say worried, but it makes me understand what she can be like when she's fighting at her full potential. It's just like you don't know what you're going to get from her. So I got to go with Manon Fiorot. Like you said, not younger, but younger in her career as far as what she has to accomplish, and just more hungry. She's looks really good. She's passed all the tests. Like, she hasn't really looked bad in any of her fights. In her UFC fights, she's only looked really good. So I got to ride the wave with her coming in here against Rose Namajunas. And it's probably somewhat of a big spot for her to be like, okay, Rose is somewhat of a legend in, women's MMA. So she's getting a big name. There's a lot of motivation there for her. I'm going to take her. And I would probably say she gets it done by decision. Lightweight bout here. Thiago Moises coming in at plus 125 against Benoit Saint-Denis, who sits at minus 155. Over under 2.5 rounds, plus 102 for the over, minus 132 for the under. Benoit Saint-Denis coming in here off a big win his last time out against Ishmael Bonfim. Completely derailed that hype train. He was a big underdog in that one. He was a plus 250 dog. Goes in there, kicks him in the body like 20 times in a row, takes him down and submits him. And it was like, what the hell just happened? Benoit seems to be that guy as far as everything goes with the toughness and just the ability to win fights. Thiago Moises coming in here off the win against Mckee Costa. And, I mean, it's kind of been up and down for him. You look at his career in the UFC, he was on a good win streak there and then fought Islam Makhachev, lost to him in round 4, got subbed there, and then another loss to Yoel Alvarez, and then comes back and beats Christos Giagos and Mckee Costa. So he's looking to get on another run here, but he's facing a tough guy in Benoit Saint-Denis, both with the skills and just with everything that he comes with. He's only 27 years old, so he's got a good future. What do you think takes this one? It should be a good fight.
Yeah, I like Saint Denis for a couple of reasons. Just his overall, man, his toughness, and he just got that dog in him. Like people say, man, he's going to fight tooth and nail to get a win. Like, he's almost impossible to put out, which I don't think he's going to have to worry about taking big shots from Moises on the feet. If he has to go to the grappling, he will. It's going to be tough against Moises. But, overall, I feel like the well-roundedness probably sits with Saint Denis as far as, on the feet. He's powerful. He'll land some big shots. He can take shots. And, he gets guys to the ground too. And on top, he's super, super strong, and he's heavy, and he's damn near impossible to finish. For Thiago Moises, though, like you mentioned, it's kind of been up and down in his career. But if you look at the names he's losing to, it's Beneil Dariush, Damir Ismagulov, who was like 20-something and 1 at the time of that loss. Islam Makhachev and Joel Alvarez. So he's fighting, high-level guys, or at least who he's losing to.
Yeah.
And then he's beating guys like Michael Johnson, Bobby Green, and Alexander Hernandez. So, yeah, man, it should be a pretty even fight when you look at it, especially in the grappling department. Like, Moises has really good jiu-jitsu. And, he's not going to go and get you down with ease, or get a guy like Saint Denis down with ease, in my opinion, because Saint Denis is so strong and that wrestling is so good, and defensive wrestling especially. So if this thing doesn't really go to the ground as much as people think, and it's sitting there on the feet, I just think Saint Denis is going to be landing the bigger shots, the more powerful shots that hurt him. We've seen Moises finish Joel Alvarez, and he's taken some big shots in fights before that too. So overall, I think Saint Denis gets this thing done. I really like him. He's riding some momentum, gets that big win over Bonfim as a big underdog. I mean, that's huge for your confidence. Former special ops for the French military. I mean, he's just a straight up killer. So, those guys like that are notoriously damn near impossible to put out. And I don't see Moises being able to do so on the feet. It's going to have to be the ground, but I just don't see him being, levels above Saint Denis by any means there. So, yeah, I'm going to stick with Saint Denis for the pick here. I do like him as a fighter. He's a lot of fun to watch.
It's tough to ignore, like, the level that Thiago Moises has fought at. And you compare that to what Benoit Saint Denis has been fighting at. That's probably why, he's looked so good, or at least you would consider, taking him over a guy like Thiago Moises, who's gotten fights over, or wins even over like a Bobby Green or Michael Johnson or Alexander Hernandez, guys that you would know to be around, the bubble of the lightweight division. So that's tough to ignore, but it's also tough to ignore Benoit as far as like the skills and just the performances that he's put on. He's never lost he's never won a decision, I should say. He's lost one fight in his entire career. It was by decision, and it was to a welterweight. It was at welterweight. He's never lost at 155. Got to take that into account. But, I mean, the wins, Nicholas Stolze, Gabriel Miranda, granted he finished both of them within 2 rounds, but those guys are like, they're not good. They're not good at all. The win over Bonfim was very eye-opening, but I also, I don't know if we're going to find out a lot about Benoit Saint Denis, how good he is in this fight. This is a real test for him against Thiago Moises. And Thiago Moises trains at ATT with the likes of Grant Dawson. The grappling is off the charts. Benoit likes to take the fight to the ground and use that grappling. So I don't know how much success he'll have with that coming in here against Thiago Moises. So it's a real test. I don't think I could play Saint Denis at that price. I do think he wins, but in this spot against Moises has just been around such good fighters for a very long time that I couldn't take Saint Denis at chalk. So honestly, maybe see some value on Thiago Moises to me, but it's very tough to go against Saint Denis in the home country of France as well. So
yeah, and that's another thing. And what really does it to me, I've looked at this fight so much because I'm excited for this one. Moises, you look at his wins, and a lot of them he's getting the fights to the ground, and that's how he's winning fights. You look at him against Bobby Green, for example. He wins the decision, but he got outstruck 42. He had in Bobby Green to 85. So a lot of that fight was him getting the fight to the ground and doing work and winning some rounds there. And, against Michael Johnson, he gets the fight to the ground and he finds a submission, but was getting outstruck heavily before that. So if he can't get Saint Denis to the ground, I just don't know if he has the output or the power. He only lands 2.47 significant strikes per minute, and that's even with being on top of guys and landing ground and pound and stuff. So it's just, I don't know if it stays on the feet. If he's got the pace and the volume and the power shots to look that good to the judges, because Saint Denis throws over 4 significant strikes per minute. He's got an 85% takedown defense. He's super built and strong. So I just feel like it's going to be a lot harder for Moises to get to those positions. And for that reason, I don't know. I feel like Saint Denis has the skills to do it, but nonetheless, it'll be high level, especially in the grappling department. It'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, I do think Saint Denis probably has the advantage on the feet. So there's that. I don't know how, like, they're both pretty well matched as far as everything goes. But yeah, I'll take Saint Denis for the pick.
The line movement too is interesting. Saint Denis opened, it was near pick'em, and now he's all the way up to -155. So
looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Light heavyweight bout. Volkan Oezdemir coming in at -180 against Bogdan Guskov coming in at +150. Hopefully that's how you say it. Not exactly sure, but Guskov, I don't know. He coming at +150, over under 1.5 rounds, +102 for the over, -132 for the under. This is his debut. He's coming in here against Volkan Oezdemir, who was supposed to fight Azamat Murzakanov. Murzakanov pulled out, so we get the debuting Bogdan Guskov. He's out of Uzbekistan. That's the flag there. 4-1 in his last 5. The one loss, he got knocked out. But honestly, I think he looks like a Anthony Smith that all the tattoos are like removed, you know? Kind of that vibe from him. Bald head. Kind of got the same face. But Oezdemir, 2-3 in his last 5. He's been fighting at the top of the division for a very long time. So that's really tough to ignore. It's kind of like Moises in the last fight we just looked at. Guskov, I mean, he's not a big underdog coming in here against a guy that's like, he's been around for a very long time. I mean, he's got 12 UFC fights. He just fought Nikita Krylov, lost to him. His wins aren't like amazing. The Rakic win is good. The split decision, that's Rakic's only real loss. The other loss is that by injury, but that's his only real loss, I would say. But the other wins, Paul Craig, Ilir Latifi. You look at the losses, Ankalaev, Krylov, Prohashka, Dominic Reyes, Anthony Smith, DC. It's tough to harp on him for those losses. Either way, I think this should be a fun scrap at 205. What do you think takes it?
Yeah, it should be really fun. I hope Guskov is as good as this. I mean, as good as people are talking about. I mean, he does have a lot of knockouts on his record. It's how he finishes most of his fights. He's going to be a good striker. He's super strong. Like, you look at him, this dude's built. He looks like he's built in a lab. But for Volkan, I mean, you mentioned his record, and he does have a ton of losses on his record to really good guys. I mean, Ankalaev and Nikita Krylov are his recent 2 losses, and both of those guys right now are at the top of the division. I think, though, Volkan's striking is really good. He hits hard. He's fast. He's accurate. I think if he wins, he's going to do this thing early. He's going to get a first-round knockout if he wins. I mean, you look at Guskov's fighting, lower-level competition, all things considered. His last loss was against a guy who was 33-8. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. But in that fight, he was getting rocked with everything he got hit by. And what finally did it was a stiff jab to the chin that wobbled him. His legs were gone, and then followed up by some shots that put him out cold. So looking at that, I think if Oezdemir can find the chin early and often, I think he's got a good chance to put him away. Because Oezdemir, like, you watch him fight, like, his striking is really good. It's world class. I mean, he hits hard. He's accurate. He throws everything. He's really technical. And, I think that'll take him a long way in this fight. I don't like that this is Guskov's debut. It's hard to get behind a debuter like that when you're fighting the dude. And Oezdemir, who does have that good of a striking resume. So, yeah, for the pick, I'm going to stick with Volkan Oezdemir. I do think, obviously, the level of competition has him prepared to beat guys like this making their debut. He's going to have a ton of experience. You just got to put it all together. And I think if he does win, it's going to be around 1 KO.
Yeah, Oezdemir, pretty solid kickboxer. I mean, that's really what he's known for. And you look at his last 2 fights, he hasn't really been able to showcase that. Like, Krylov took him down and kind of like wrestle fucked him, which was like out of nowhere. Paul Craig, you can't really engage too much. He was just trying to not be in his guard the entire fight, and that's just how he won. He's like, I'm not going to fall in your guard. I'll just touch you up, kick you in the legs while you're on your back, and won the fight that way. Ankalaev, he won a round, to me at least. He won the second round against Ankalaev. So, I mean, he's not like, I don't think he's been really able to throw the hands for a little bit. So he's probably itching at the bit to do that here against Guskov. I do think it'd be tough to really buy into Guskov against Oezdemir, just considering the level of competition that they're facing. But the same can be said. Like Oezdemir at chalk is always tough. I do think he gets it done, but with the lack of wins as of recently, it's tough to get behind. I think he gets it done, though. I'm going to take him for the pick. We'll see if I end up getting there at the end of the week, but for the sake of the show, I'm going to take him. Bantamweight bout here. Giannis Ghemmouri coming in at plus 235 against Loughran. I think that's how you say it. Minus 310 for Loughran. Over under 1.5 rounds, minus 220 for the over, plus 180 for the under. 12-1 for Giannis, 8-0 undefeated for Cowlin. We're coming in here. Cowlin is the Cage Warriors champion at bantamweight. He just won that back in May 6th of 2023, and that was a vacant bantamweight championship. Got the finish in the second round there. He's been fighting in Cage Warriors for his past 4 fights. And if you look at Giannis, he's not a big Cage Warriors guy, although coming out of France, he's been fighting over Brave CF and some UAE Warriors. He's been on a good little win streak here. His last loss was back in 2015. He hasn't been super active, but been a little bit more active as of recently. But coming in here as a big underdog. I mean, these are 2 newcomers to the UFC, so it's tough to really gauge level of competition and who they're fighting. If I look at who Loughran is like beating, I want to say it's like anybody crazy good. But it is Cage Warriors, which is like one of the better promotions in Europe. I don't know. It's really tough to judge these fights. I don't think I could really get behind minus 300 on any kind of debuter. But what are you thinking in this one?
Yeah, betting wise, this fight's just going to be like impossible to figure out what to do, because it's even like putting Loughran in a parlay. It's like, man, he's making his UFC debut. There's so many factors that go into that, from guys being nervous, guys, can't handle this big of a stage and the bright lights, anything like that. And both guys are making their debut, so you just don't know. You look at Loughran though, and he gets a lot of finishes. He's got great kickboxing. He's strong. Like, he's shorter. I think he's 5'6", all muscle. He's super tough too. He can take shots. But he's really accurate and he's really powerful on the feet, and it leads to a lot of finishes. What I do like looking at his record is that he's not just going out there and finishing these dudes in the first minute or the first round. Like, he gets a lot of finishes somewhere in the middle of the fight, which shows you, he sets up his shots well. He knows how to, I guess, stay composed. You can watch a lot of his fights. He does have a lot of composure in the first round, kind of figures his opponents out and then breaks them down from there. I do like seeing that out of a prospect who hasn't fought at this level yet, because sometimes things like that take time to learn. He throws really good kicks. He throws them straight up the middle, and that lead left hand he seems to hurt guys. He's got a good left hook. And, you look at Giannis, he does have K1 kickboxing experience, I believe. Kind of more of that counter striker. He's going to sit back and wait and look to counter guys. Sometimes waits a little too long, in my opinion, to where he falls behind. Eventually, he finds a lot of finishes. Some of his wins, what I mean by falling behind is like a few of his wins recently have come by split decision, where he's looked good and then he kind of plays that counter striking game where he waits and then guys catch up to him and make it a really close fight. So yeah, taking all that into consideration, I do think Loughran wins this fight. I think it's a guy, out of Ireland. UFC loves those dudes, McGregor, Ian Gary. If he can just keep winning, he's going to have a bright future in the UFC and he's going to find a lot of success. So I'm going to take him for the pick here. Again, betting wise, minus 300, never a good idea. If you're out there listening, never a good idea for a UFC debuter, especially fighting another debuter. You just don't know what you're going to get at times. But from the naked eye and watching these dudes side by side, I do think Loughran gets this thing done.
Yeah, I mean, based off the film I watched, it's probably going to be somewhat of a kickboxing type of fight. I mean, Loughran very content to stand and strike with you, even despite being 5'6". He's going up against 5'9" Giannis here, who's another kickboxer. So I don't know. Maybe he wants to mix it up and go for some wrestling and some grappling. He's got a couple submissions on his record, 2 of them to be exact for Cowlin, but they were back, in his second and third fight in his professional career. So maybe he was just fighting cans, which if you look at it, I mean, his fight against Will Cairns was 0-39 at that point in MMA. So that's like a submission win over him. What does that really mean? That guy actually had been submitted 15 times and knocked out 27 times. So there it is. Even before that, the guy he fought before that in 2019 was 0-31. So this is like it's really tough to take those wins into account. You could pretty much just wash those out. Like he's probably 4-0, 4 wins in Cage Warriors. That's what he is. -300, I don't think I could get there because Giannis could very well go out there and give him some problems with the length and the kickboxing. I don't think Loughran is some like elite striker on the feet. So I think it'll probably be a little bit closer. I will take him for the pick. But yeah, I mean, Giannis definitely got a shot as a dog here.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say about Loughran too that I noticed that I forgot to mention is that like his movement isn't like it's almost like a kickboxing movement. Like the head movement's not really there for MMA. His footwork, he's going to need some work, and he might get by with it here against a guy like Giannis, who's maybe not the best or highest level debuter, but at some point, like that footwork and head movement is going to have to get better at the UFC level because he will get caught at some point. I don't know if it happens here, but just something I noticed watching film.
That is just wild. I mean, his first 2 opponents combined record were 0-7. That's insane. But I'm still gonna take him for the pick.
Yeah.
Featherweight bout here. Morgan, I think it's Charriere going up against Manolo Zecchini, coming in at +225. Charriere -300. A record of 18-9-1 for Charriere. I mean, he's coming out of France as well. 27 years of age, so he's got a lot of professional fights under his belt. Zecchini fighting out of Italy. Both men fairly young in their career, 27 and 26. This should be a fun little scrap. I've been watching Morgan Charriere on film. It's a pretty fun fighter to watch. Cage Warriors champ once again. And his last time out, or he was a Cage Warriors champ. His last time out was back in July 21st. So he hasn't been off that long since his last fight. Got a win against Diego Silva. And that was a round 3 finish. So he's kind of been up and down. I mean, his losses in Cage Warriors are to some pretty decent guys. Jordan Vucinic, who's the current Cage Warriors champion. Paul Hughes, another solid fighter who's 9-1 out of Ireland. Not bad losses. I honestly like to see guys come in here with like a lot of fights, and if they have some losses, it's not bad at all. I like to see that they're fighting better competition. He's got a win over William Ghemmouri, who is supposed to be on this card as well. So there's that. But if you look at his opponent, Manolo Zecchini, he has not been fighting in Cage Warriors. He's been fighting in other promotions. It's tough to gauge how good these guys are, but I mean, he's coming in as a pretty sizable dog. What are you thinking on this one?
Yeah, you look at Charriere, and that 9 losses really jumps off the page at you. But he's losing decisions, and he's not like he's going out there and getting knocked out or like he's chinny or doesn't have a ground game or anything. You look at Zecchini though, and early, if you take him, you might think this is a great bet in the first round because the dude's powerful. He's super explosive. He burns hot from the get-go. He finds a lot of KOs with the overhand right. He can wrestle a little bit and get takedowns when needed. But like I said, he burns hot. In that first round, he's always looking really good. And as fights go on, he kind of will fade out a little bit. And Charriere never been knocked out, so maybe he's got that going for him. He's tough. He's got good striking, and he's got a good, well-rounded game as well. And the cardio is going to be better for Charriere, in my opinion. He'll fight 3 rounds at a decent pace. And if this fight goes past 1.5, I think he'll start to take over because Zecchini, I think I'm saying that right. I have no idea. Tough names this week.
Yeah, it is.
A lot of his finishes do come in the first round, and I hate seeing that for UFC debuters because they haven't really shown that they can fight for the whole duration of the fight if they have to, whereas Charriere has. So that's a big telltale sign for me. At minus 300, again, it's just not an ideal bet and betting situation. Having two UFC debuters again, I'm going to take Morgan Charriere for the pick. I do think he'll be a little bit more well-rounded, and that cardio is going to take him far in this fight at least. So that'll be my pick.
Yeah, I like that at least he's losing the decisions to some decent competition, and that he's got a lot of under his belt. So I'm going to take Charriere as well. I think he's probably going to be able to outlast Manolo Zecchini's strikes on the feet. Zecchini has fought at Jackson Wink before. It looks like he's doing most of his fight camps out, not at Jackson Wink anymore. But he's coming in here. I think he'll be dangerous off the bat. He's got some really explosive movements, mixes it up with the knees, the kicks, and all the different weapons. So Charriere's got to mind his P's and Q's. I think as the fight goes on, he should take over and get a win. I'll take him. Bantamweight bout here. Zarah Fairn coming in at plus 300 against Jacqueline Cavalcanti. I believe that's how you say it. Minus 400 for her in her debut. So big favorite in her debut. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 115 for the over and for the under. Zarah Fairn, 6-5 in her professional career. She was supposed to fight on the Paris card last year. Couldn't get it done. She's getting it done here. She's obviously from France. You see the flag there. 2-3 in her last 5. She's 0-3 in the UFC. For Cavalcanti, fighting out of Portugal, making her debut 5-1 for her. Zarah Fairn, her last time out was at the beginning of the year, UFC 283. She fought Josiane Nunes at featherweight. This one's going to be at bantamweight. She's had a lot of problems making bantamweight before. She has literally never made bantamweight in the UFC. So will she make weight? We will see. You got to cross your fingers because it's been a real struggle for her. She's missed weight numerous times. And her last time against Josiane Nunes, who's like just super short for featherweight. Big overhand left. She was a big favorite going up against Zarah Fairn. Zarah Fairn was able to make it to a decision with her and made it a close fight. Like Josiane Nunes got into a dogfight with Zarah Fairn. So that's encouraging for Zarah Fairn there. But Jacqueline Cavalcanti only losses to Martina Jindrova. That was on the PFL Challenger Series at the beginning of 2022. Since then, she's gotten wins in UAE Warriors against Yulia Kutsenko, who actually has a loss to Liang Na. So put that into account, I guess. She's and then got a win against Nadia, not even trying to say that, and a win in the LFA. So if you watch that LFA fight, it was a 5-round fight against Melissa Croden at bantamweight, and Melissa Croden's a pretty big girl. She's 5'10". Cavalcanti beat her for 5 rounds and nearly finished her in the first round. She's 5'9", so she's got a good frame on her. This is kind of a greasy women's bantamweight fight. So probably can't go wrong just taking a flyer on the dog here, especially, in France. She's from France against the debuter, but Cavalcanti looks like the better fighter to me at this point. Minus 400, don't think I'll take it. But what are you thinking?
Yeah, I feel the same way. And like for Fairn, you mentioned the weight cut issues and doesn't really make the weight. It's like you feel like that comes back and bites her because she does look good early in fights. And her last fight against Josiane Nunes, she was cracking Josiane in the first round. I don't think anybody expected that. A lot of people had Josiane first round KO, and Fairn came out and looked like, okay, this is going to be a long night for Josiane Nunes, and then she just kind of slows down. And I think that has to do with weight, trying to cut all that weight, doesn't have the durability and cardio that maybe she could. But, you look at her size. She is big for the division. Cavalcanti, I feel like, is going to be pretty damn big for this division, too. I'm talking about 2 good kickboxers here. Fairn has fought decent fighters in her last, 3 UFC fights, which she's taken a loss in each of them. But nonetheless, they have been good fighters. She is powerful, too. I do like this matchup. Like, normally you wouldn't pay much attention to women's MMA at this level, but I think you could see something decent in the kickboxing versus kickboxer here. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I think Fairn can't tire out here. I think Cavalcanti will be a little bit better cardio wise. But the one knock I have on Cavalcanti is the level of competition is not the best. You look at a lot of the girls she's beating, some are 0-0, others, pretty brand new to MMA. And the loss she has, the Jondarova in the PFL, it doesn't really age that well because if you look at Jondarova, she's kind of getting smacked around in the PFL now anyways. So makes me a little nervous, makes me wonder how good she really is. At the same time, it's not like you're fighting the best in the division making your debut. I think it could be a little closer than people think. I think plus 300 on a women's dog who is a good striker and powerful is never a bad idea because weird shit happens all the time. A lot of the odds makers get these lines wrong on women's MMA, especially at this level. So for the pick, Cavalcanti should win. Betting wise, probably not a bad idea to lay a little something on Zara Fairn here.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the last fight for Fairn, like she was a plus 400 underdog somewhere around there against Josiane Nunes, who had Fairn had like a 6-inch reach advantage, 6-inch height advantage. Like looking back on that, that was such a risky play to take Josiane Nunes at like minus 500. And she made it look like a pick'em, basically. I mean, it was a really close fight. She outstruck her, I believe, by the numbers in every single round. And the third round was tied, but the more significant strikes were for Josiane Nunes. That's why she won. Coming in here, I just don't really think it's worth the price for Cavalcanti. Yeah. I mean, the only reason Zara Fairn is still on the UFC roster is because she's from France and they want her for this card. Like she's 0-3. So this is her last hurrah. Can she get it done? We will see. I'm going to take Cavalcanti for the pick because I just think she's better. But I don't know what she's really going to look like in her debut. So, yeah, minus 400, not really what you should be getting invested in this one. Nora Cornolle, who actually has a loss to Jacqueline Cavalcanti, who we just talked about previous, coming in at minus 115 against Jocelyn Edwards, who's sitting at minus 115. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 210 for the over, plus 170 for the under. Nora Cornolle, 6-1, 5-0 in her last 5. Jocelyn Edwards, 3-2 in her last 5. 27 years of age for her, 34 years of age for Cornolle. So, I mean, making her UFC debut at 34 years age, that is, if she wasn't from France, would she be in this spot? I don't know. But, yeah, the only loss is to Jacqueline Cavalcanti, who's on this card. That was in her professional debut. Since then, she's won all 6 of her fights. She gets the spot here against Jocelyn Edwards, who we saw her against Lucy Pudilova. We didn't think she won that fight. I don't think most people don't think she won that fight. But either way, I mean, she's on a 3-fight win streak. 2 of them by split decision. And those 2 wins that she has by split decision, she missed weight on both of those. So will she make 135 is definitely a question. Because if she goes 3 fights in a row with a weight miss, they may force her to fight at 145. Either way, she hasn't had a cancel bout because of that. She's only been able to fight because of it. So she's coming here. I mean, a lot more UFC experience. Obviously, she's got 6 UFC fights, a lot more experience professionally. But either way, it's a pick 'em. So who are you taking?
Yeah, I like what you said about Nora Nor that, if this card wasn't in France, would she even be on it? Because you look at her record, man, she's not beaten anybody worth anything. I mean, 4-2, her last win. The one before that was a girl who was 0-0 in UAE Warriors. And, another girl who's 12-10, 1-0, 2-0. She's just not fighting high-level competition. Jocelyn Edwards is fighting somewhat decent fighters. Like Lucy Pudilova is not a world beater, but she's going to probably better than Nora here. Jeon Kim, not the best. Pasquale, not the best, but better than probably that Nora is, in my opinion, at least. Jocelyn Edwards, though, is going to be a decent kickboxer. She doesn't throw anything real powerful. She just kind of touches you like over and over and over, racks up points, can get takedowns. She has a few submissions on her record. An arm bar on there even shows some kind of ground game at least. And for Nora coming in here, she's got a lot of round 1, round 2 finishes, a lot of KO, TKOs. So I'm interested to see what happens if she can't get that right away. Like 5 of her 6 wins come by knockout. So if she can't get that against Jocelyn Edwards, who's gonna, probably be in your face and touching you up for 3 rounds, I want to see how she responds. UFC debut. What happens is if the fight goes longer, I'm not willing to take a shot on her here. I think Jocelyn Edwards maybe steals another decision here, maybe gets another split. I think that she's kind of the split decision queen at this point. Her last 2 fights are come by split decision. So, but overall, man, on a serious note, I do think Jocelyn probably a little more skilled on the feet, probably going to look better. The judges land more volume, and I'll take her for the pick. Probably not betting on this fight though.
Yeah, Jocelyn Edwards really just has struggled when she gets taken down. I mean, she look at the fights where she's able to stand and kickbox with you. She does pretty well. I mean, she controls range very well with her kicks. She throws a lot of kicks, especially just to keep you at range. She's very rangy with her attacks. I mean, based off of the film that I watched on Nora Cornolle, like she's not some takedown monster. So I would expect this fight to take place on the feet for a majority of it. And Jocelyn Edwards, a lot of volume. I expect her to come in here and get another win, probably by decision, like you said. I was honestly shocked at the price on it because Jocelyn, if she's able to just stand and kickbox with you, like she's able to beat these girls that are like, borderline in the UFC or not, like Ramona Pasquale, Wu Yanan, a Ji Yun Kim. Like she's just able to beat them because she's just throws a little bit more oomph on her shots. So there's that. Obviously, it's women's MMA, so you can't really go crazy, especially with the decisions that are made. With this fight probably going to go to a decision, but I'll take Jocelyn Edwards for the pick. Nora Cornolle didn't really impress me with anything. Her last win was literally a leg injury where it was kind of like a non-contact. Like the girl just looked down at her leg and she was like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
It wasn't like some crazy leg kick or anything. So, yeah, I think Jocelyn Edwards probably takes that one. Welterweight bout here, Mckee making his return to the UFC, coming in at plus 155 against Loosa, sits at minus 185. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 160 for the over, plus 130 for the under. Loosa coming in here, 29 years of age, 27 years of age for Mckee. Second stint in the UFC, 6'2". You see the height there. Pretty good frame for a welterweight. Out of Ireland, Mckee, in his first stint in the UFC, got fed to the wolves against Hamzat Chimaev, finished in the first round, then had to fight Alex Morono, who's not an easy fight. I mean, he was an underdog in both of his fights in the UFC, gets cut, goes out to Cage Warriors, and picks up back-to-back round 3, finishes by TKO, and then a win his last time out, and he just beat the piss out of Jim Wallhead. Honestly, I mean, those guys that he beat, they're not like world beaters by any means because they're fighting in Cage Warriors. They're not fighting in a major promotion, but they're decent opponents. Justin Burlinson is a decent opponent. He was on the Contender Series, got knocked out by Johan Lioness, but at least he made it there. And then Jim Wallhead, an older guy, I mean, 39 years of age. He didn't really look like he belonged in there with Mckee. Mckee was able to just put a beating on him, and then the corner was like, yeah, this is enough. Loosa, 1-1 in the UFC, lost his Contender Series fight to Jack Della Maddalena, lost his UFC debut against Munir Lazes, and then a win over AJ Fletcher. He's coming in here as a favorite against Mckee. It's an interesting line. Mckee, I don't want to see, he just doesn't really impress me when I watch him on film. But either way, he's 6'2". He puts a lot of volume out there. He's a decent striker. Same with Loosa. He's a very solid kickboxer as well. Should be a good fight. What do you think it takes it?
Yeah, I think it'll be a good fight too. Reese, second UFC stint, man. He is pretty long and he's tall, and he's going to have a 4-inch reach advantage here, and I think a 4-inch height advantage as well. On the feet, like he gets some late finishes and he's got decent striking, but to me, to the eye, he just looks a little slower. And he's not really hitting you with as many big shots as you would expect him to, being that size. For Loosa, though, he can crack, and he's shown that he can strike with pretty good strikers and land shots. He's also got that wrestling to fall back on. He's super explosive and powerful. The one thing that would scare me off of Angelosa here is you look at that loss against Manir Lazez, who's longer and kind of that kickboxing style is kind of looks a little bit like Reese McKee's style at times. McKee not as good as Lazez in my opinion, but kind of that frame and style that Angelosa could struggle with a little bit. But against AJ Fletcher, man, I was super impressed. I believe he was the slight dog in that fight, if I'm remembering correctly, and was able to land a couple of takedowns after watching the film when he needed to, and landed some big shots on the feet as well. He is super powerful. Reese McKee does get hit. So that combination right there makes me lean Angelosa to get this thing done and kind of fall back on that wrestling if he does get overwhelmed at times or in a tricky situation. I think he's strong enough and explosive enough to kind of get the fight where he wants it to if he has to. So, yeah, give me Angelosa here.
Yeah, Angelosa fights out of Kill Cliff, or at least that's where he's been training at. So I like that for him. I think his stand-up game is really crisp. You just watch like the technique with everything. It's really sharp. He fights fairly long. I mean, he's only 5'10", but he does fight fairly long. For Reese McKee, like you said, just not super fast with his attacks. Maybe just because he's 6'2", it's kind of like that tall man defense where he can just use his reach and doesn't need a lot of head movement and such. It's going to be tough, I think, going back to Cage Warriors, having that success, and then you get thrown back against a really solid striker in Angelosa. Like, how do you fare with that? But for Ange, I mean, he probably tries to mix in some takedowns here or there because that's something that Reese McKee has struggled with. You look at the fight against Burlinson. Like, Burlinson had a lot of success taking him down and landing a lot of ground and pound there. That was a pretty fun fight to watch. You watch it's kind of back and forth. I mean, Burlinson landed some good shots as well. Both guys were busted up, and then Reese McKee lands the knockout blow in round 3. It was a good fight. I'm interested to see Reese McKee, how he looks back here, because the 2 fights in the UFC were tough. Angelosa not near the Hamzat level, and I not near the Alex Morono level, I don't think either. It's tough, I think, to take Losa at chalk, but I do think he wins because, like the loss to Lazez doesn't really age the best. I mean, the win over AJ Fletcher was kind of due to Fletcher gassing out too, because Fletcher nearly had him finished in that one. Angelosa was able to weather through it and get a win. But for the pick, I'm going to go with Losa. But at the chalk, I don't really like it too much. Bantamweight bout here. Clayton Rodrigues coming at plus 235 in his move up from lightweight against Farid Basharat, who sits at minus 310. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 185 for the over, plus 155 for the under. The undefeated Farid Basharat. Don't get him confused with his brother Javid Basharat, but he is undefeated. Both of them are. Clayton Rodrigues missed weight back-to-back fights. Back-to-back fights. He missed weight against Shannon Ross. Was going to fight Tetsuro Taira, missed weight again. So they're like, all right, buddy, you're going to have to fight at 135. So we'll see how he looks. I mean, he's not a small 125er by any means. He's 5'6", though. Farid 5'8". He's going to be at a 4-inch reach disadvantage. And coming in here as a dog. I mean, Farid, the win over Blackshear in his UFC debut ages very well, considering what Blackshear has done since then. Nearly beat Mario Batista. Some of them, including myself, thought that he beat Mario Batista. So that ages well. I mean, he's undefeated. He's a tactician. Like, the Basharat bros are really good. You watch them fight, and they just seem like they're in control of everything. The grappling is there. The striking is there. They're just very calculated with everything they throw. For Clayton Rodrigues, his win in the UFC doesn't age well. I mean,
Not at all.
Knocking out Shannon Ross isn't really saying much at this point. Took him 59 seconds. Next time out, Jesus Aguilar, who has no KOs, goes out there and knocks him out in 17 seconds. So, I mean, it looked like a good performance, a finish in under a minute, but then it doesn't age the best. Lost to CJ Vergara, so he's 1-1 in the UFC. Those are at those are at flyweight. Going up to bantamweight here, it's going to be a tough test, I think, for him. But do you think he has a shot to take down Basharat?
I mean, he is like he's pretty explosive, at least in the Shannon Ross fight. He looked super explosive and got the early finish. But again, it doesn't age well, like you said. Like it looked, Shannon Ross has looked terrible. He gets knocked out early every single fight. And then Vergara didn't necessarily look dominant or that good in his last fight either. And he lost via split decision to him. Farid is going to be better than everybody that Clayton Rodrigues has fought so far. And he's going to be more solid everywhere than any of those fighters as well. I mean, Farid, to go in there against Damon Blackshear and not only win a convincing decision, somewhat convincing, I guess, but land 3 takedowns on that good of a grappler, like was super impressive. And it shows you how good Farid's grappling is. Like you look at the Basharat brothers and you watch them and stuff, they have super slick kickboxing. They use their kicks really, really well and their striking's crisp. But I think their ground game's super underrated, and especially Farid. I think he's the better wrestler and grappler of the two. And if Clydeson can't really get things going on the feet and has to defend takedowns the whole time and get taken down over and over, I just think Farid, as the fight goes on, just going to be even more dominant. And I think, this is kind of, you fight Damon Blackshear, who's fighting really good guys and beating really good guys. Go down to Clydeson Rodrigues, who is going to naturally be a smaller dude. I think Farid's going to have a lot of success and kind of implement his game plan wherever he wants us at.
Yeah, I'm big on the Basharat bros. So, I mean, coming in here against Clayton, I don't really see how he loses. Like, I mean, he's undefeated, so he's never been finished, obviously. He just seems like he's in control of everything. And you look at his fight on the Contender Series, outstruck the guy 116-27. Like, he just completely mollywopped him. 30-26 on 2 of the judges' scorecards. Just an easy win. Easy contract to dish out to him. And then in the debut, what he did to Damon Blackshear, like he was a big favorite against Damon Blackshear. Blackshear looked good, but Basharat still managed to come out with a win. Like and it wasn't like a robbery by any means, but Blackshear put him in tough positions. He was able to get out of them. Basharat was able to still outland him and have good success with the top control in that fight. So, I mean, a lot of stuff that we didn't see out of Mario Batista, who's, was supposed to be fighting Cody Garbrandt up at the rankings. So minus 300, I honestly, I'm honest. I never really lay minus 300 on anybody, but I think Basharat is able to go in there and pick up a win. I don't really see how he loses. I think he's so well-rounded in every facet of the game, him and his brother Javid. So I think he's got him outmatched and outgunned in every facet of the game, and I think he pulls out a victory here. So I'm going to take him for the pick, obviously, and I'm looking forward to seeing him back in action. But those are the picks for UFC Paris. 10 fights we just broke down, and we got 2 more, hopefully, to get announced. So stay tuned to the channel. If you're watching here on YouTube, drop a sub to support it, drop a like. And if you want to go follow us on Instagram at the Double Leg, stay up to date with everything. We got Contender Series tomorrow. Should be a fun card. We'll be dropping the picks or the bets on through the link in the description there, so you can hop on there. Those are for free. If you want the bets for this weekend, you can wait until Friday and just get this card, or you can hop in the Double Leg Premium membership through the link in the description. Stay up to date on everything at the Double Leg on Instagram, as I said, at HeyJivePicks on the medias. For me, where can they find you?
All social media is at the Parlay MMA.
All right, till the next time, we'll be recapping some UFC Paris, the Double Leg. Signing out.